Which games does she think are the best? The long ones, the short ones, simple, complex. What do you think for Ambie Valdez? Are all her favorite games 18XX? Let's see how well you guess.
Hi, I'm Ambie, and these are my top 100 favorite games as of the end of 2019. This video is numbers 50 through 41. My number 50 is Antiquity, which is a civilization building game. In the game, there's a map with lots of different types of land where you can harvest things like wood and crops and fish, and then you also can build your cities. When you build your city, you have your own personal player board that's a grid, and each building that you build is like a Tetris-like piece that you have to put into your grid city. In order to do each action or build buildings, you have to use workers and resources. So there's a lot of planning ahead in order to have the resources that you need in order to build what you want and do what you want. One cool thing about Antiquity is that there are different win conditions, and you actually choose your win condition partway through the game. So depending on how your city is building out, you can decide if you want your win condition to be like area control or if you want it to be building a bunch of buildings or something else. Also, pretty much every time you do something, you create pollution, which is really thematic, but also difficult to control because you're having to produce the resources, but then it creates pollution, which pollutes the area around you, and then it's harder to get more resources because there's pollution there. So I really like the building up of your resources and building up of your city, both like the spatial aspect of building the city in the grid and also just planning ahead with all the resources and the pollution. And I also like the different victory goals because it's interesting how people can have different types of civilizations and still win no matter what type of civilization they have. My number 49 is Yggdrasil, which is a cooperative game in which players are Norse gods trying to protect Asgard from the monsters. In the game, there's a bunch of different action spaces you can go to, and you're trying to beat back the monsters like Loki and Fenrir and other monsters. But you can't kill them, you can't ever defeat them, you just have to keep pushing them back for the whole game until the game ends. And after everyone's turn, some of the monsters move forwards, and if they move too far forward or there are too many monsters move forward, then you lose the game. The way you defeat the monsters is doing the different actions. You can get weapons for the monsters, or you can get Vikings or elves, which help you with your rolls, because the main mode of attack is rolling dice, but there's lots of ways to mitigate that and add strength to your attack. So as the game goes on, you get stronger weapons and you can fight back more. This game kind of has a similar feeling to Ghost Stories, which I mentioned in a previous video, because the monsters just keep coming and you have to keep fighting them, and you're just always on the brink of defeat. But in Yggdrasil, I like the weapon mechanism because the weapons are specialized for each monster. So there is a weapon that's good against Fenrir, and there's a weapon that's good against Loki. So each person can specialize to be attacking that specific monster, and I think that's neat. My number 48 is Concept, which is a guessing game similar to Pictionary, but with little icons instead. I've never played Concept with keeping score, so I just play it like an activity. But in Concept, one player is trying to get people to guess a word or a phrase. And they do this by putting pieces on a board. The board has a bunch of different pictures on it that represent different concepts. Like there's a picture of a person, that means the concept is a person that you're trying to guess. Or there's a picture of a rabbit and a picture of a turtle, meaning that the concept is fast or slow. So you're putting these cubes on all the different icons to get people to guess what it is. And they get a concept of what it is you're guessing and then try to guess it. And it's really fun just giving clues and guessing, and I just play it until people get tired of it. I always have fun playing it with a lot of people, and it's a great game, especially for conventions late at night when people are tired. So that's why Concept is my number 48. My number 47 is Gloomhaven, which is a cooperative adventure campaign game. In Gloomhaven, everyone's a different character, and you're going through a campaign, completing different scenarios, trying to defeat monsters. So each scenario has a different map that you put out, and monsters come out and you can fight them. But what I like about Gloomhaven is the system of doing actions. Everyone has a hand of cards that have a top and a bottom that do different things, like the top would be some attack and the bottom would be another attack or a movement or something. And on your turn, you play two cards, and you have to do the top action of one and the bottom action of another. The cards also have numbers on it that say the initiative, so whoever plays the lowest number gets to go first. And the enemies also have random cards that come out with numbers, and that determines their initiative. And the cards that you have aren't random. You start with all of your cards in your hand, and then after you play the 2 cards, they go in your discard pile. Eventually, you can get your cards back, but you have to get rid of a card each time you do that. So there's a lot of planning in getting the cards that you want to use and making sure you can save the actions that you want to use for later before all your cards run out eventually. So I really like planning out, trying to get your actions to be optimized based on what cards you have. And then also, sometimes you can get like a really big attack depending on how the monsters are and what your teammates are doing. But it's really fun just planning ahead, and then it ends up that you can get a really good turn sometimes. But I don't own Gloomhaven, and it takes a lot of time to set up, so I don't get to play it as often as I would like. And when I do play it, I want to play it multiple times since the setup takes so long. So that's why Gloomhaven is my number 47. My number 46 is Sleuth, which is a deduction game. It's kind of like Clue without the board. So in Sleuth, there's a bunch of cards with different gems on it, and there's one gem that everyone's trying to guess. Everyone gets a hand of cards, so they know some gems that it's not. And on your turn, you're asking questions to other players to see how many of certain types of gems they have. There's different types of gems, different colors of gems, and different numbers, so there's all those combinations. And on your turn, you have cards that determine what you can ask. So the card could be like a red card, like, oh, how many red gems do you have? Or it could be like a red pair, and then you ask how many red pairs do you have? That means how many red gems that are only 2 gems do you have? So you're asking these questions and getting a bunch of information, and then you have to deduce what the hidden gem is. I really liked Clue growing up, and I really like deduction games, so this is basically has the deduction of Clue without the dice rolling. So on your turn, you always get to ask someone a question. You don't have to make sure you get into a room or something. So that's why I like Sleuth. It's a really fun deduction game. My number 45 is Catacombs, which is a 1 versus many dexterity dungeon crawling game. In Catacombs, one person is a dungeon master, and the rest of the people are heroes trying to go through the dungeons and defeat all the monsters, and then defeat the main bad guy. But the way the game works is it's a flicking game. All of the heroes are discs, and all of the monsters are also discs, and in order to do attacks, you flick them, and you want to hit the thing that you're attacking. There are different types of attacks too, like there are archers who shoot arrows, so that's like a separate little disc that you flick instead of flicking the character itself. I like dexterity games, and I think it's really interesting and unique to have the flicking be attacking, and also just the dungeon crawling theme on it. You get to make upgrades and have different types of weapons, I think is really neat. So that's why Catacombs is my number 45. My number 44 is Android Netrunner, which is a 2-player asymmetrical card game. It was a living card game that's no longer in production, but basically you would buy a core set and you could buy multiple expansion packs and get cards, and you could build your deck outside of the game. In the game, you needed 2 separate decks, one for the corporation and one for the runner. And the theme is that runners are basically computer hackers trying to hack into the corporations and steal agendas from them. And the corporations are trying to prevent that from happening while also scoring their agendas, like building them up. So it's very asymmetrical and also really thematic. And depending on what deck you build, they play very differently too. But I really like the gameplay of it because it was very interactive and dependent on what the other player played. So you're trying to kind of get into their mind and see what they're going to play. The corporation player can play cards face down, and they're hiding all of their cards, so they're trying to keep it a secret and trick the runner. Some of the cards they play can be traps and hurt the runner, and some of the cards are just bluffs. And meanwhile, the runner is trying to build up their rig and go to the different locations and get through. So I really like playing this game, and my husband and I actually used to go to a lot of tournaments, and we were really into it. But because it was a living card game and we had to keep getting the expansion packs, we kind of stopped and then haven't played in a while. So even though I haven't played in a while, I still really enjoyed it when I did play it, and I have really good memories of playing it. And it's still one of my most played games ever. My number 43 is Shh, which is a cooperative card game where you're trying to spell out words without talking. The deck is just 26 cards, the letters of the alphabet. The vowels will be in the middle of the table, and everyone has a hand of cards that are the consonants, and you're trying to get rid of all of the cards. To do this on your turn, you just play a card, and then the next person has to play a card that will be making a word, basically. So if you play an F, then someone can play an O, and then the next person can play an R, and that's a word. What's interesting is you can't talk, and you don't know what consonants the other players have. So you're trying to make a word in order, but you don't know what order people have the consonants that you need. So you're trying to play cards that will have the most possible options for words. I mentioned before that I like quick cooperative games, and this is another one that's portable, pretty easy to learn, and really fun to play. My number 42 is Cryptid, which is a deduction game where you're trying to find the location of a cryptid on a map. The map has a bunch of different hex spaces, and they each have a different terrain or buildings on them or animal types. And everyone has a clue about where the cryptid could be. For example, my clue could be that it's either on mountains or on forests. Or someone else's clue could be it's within 2 spaces of a blue building. So with everyone's clues, it points to exactly one spot. And on your turn, you're questioning people to see if it's possible for their clue if the cryptid could be there. I mentioned before that I really like deduction games, and I like this one a lot because you don't actually have to take notes. When you question someone, they put a cube or a disc of their color onto the space to indicate whether or not the cryptid can be there according to their clue. So as the game progresses, the board is filled with cubes and discs, and you can see all of the information there. Everyone also has a cheat sheet that shows the possibilities of what the clues are. So it can take a lot of time if someone's trying to think through all of the options of what everyone's clues are and where it could be. But I really like the deduction of that, and I think it's really fun and neat that you don't have to write anything down in this deduction game. My number 41 is Pandemic Legacy, which is a cooperative campaign game where you're trying to save the world. There's Pandemic Legacy Season 1 and Season 2. I'm kind of lumping them together because I've played through all of Season 1, but I'm only partway through Season 2 right now. This is a legacy game, which means that each time you play, new rules get introduced and you're changing the board and things are changing. So there's spoilers, so I'm not going to go over into how the gameplay is. But the base mechanisms are similar to the game Pandemic. There's a map and each player is a pawn, and you can do 4 actions on your turn, doing like movement or trying to cure diseases, things like that. I really like my plays of Pandemic Legacy because the legacy element is really fun. It introduces a story and a permanence, so each time you play, it actually matters what's happening because it'll affect future parts of the game. It's also fun getting to rip up cards that you no longer use and getting to put stickers on things. But if you don't like doing that to components, then you might not like legacy games. But I have a lot of fun playing through these legacy games. Right now, I think I'm enjoying Season 2 more than Season 1 because the mechanisms are different and they're more challenging for us as a group. We've been losing more often than in Season 1. And I like things that are more challenging. But both of them were really great experiences. And those were my numbers 50 through 41 favorite games. Stick around for the rest of my list, and thanks for watching.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.